Back in 2011, 3 years after I started taking acting classes, I booked my first speaking role in a major movie. The movie was called Won't Back Down, and it starred 3 A-list actors: Maggie Gyllenhaal, Viola Davis, and Oscar Isaac. Now, during the audition process for this movie, I learned one huge lesson about auditioning that has continued to help me to this very day. So in this video, I want to share with you how I auditioned for and booked my role, as well as the big lesson that I learned that will hopefully help you in your career as well. What's up, my fellow actors? Welcome to the Acting Career Center, here to help you learn the skills you need to break into the film and television industry. My name is Kurt Yu. Thank you so much for spending some time here with me today. If this is your first time here, make sure to subscribe to this channel to get more videos on acting, auditioning, and career advice every single week. Now, a lot of people want to know how to audition for a movie, especially big Hollywood movies. So today I want to share with you the story of how I booked my first Hollywood movie role, as well as the big lesson that I learned from that audition experience. The first thing that I want to explain is what I mean by Hollywood movie. Just because a movie is produced by a studio that is based in Hollywood, that doesn't necessarily mean that that movie is filmed in Hollywood. The best example of this is the highest grossing movie of all time, Avengers Endgame. Now, I think everyone would agree that Avengers Endgame is a major blockbuster Hollywood movie. But guess what? Avengers Endgame was not filmed in Hollywood. The majority of the movie was filmed in Atlanta, Georgia. That's the case for many movies that are quote-unquote Hollywood movies. They are filmed in other states and sometimes other countries. And that's what happened with my first movie role in Won't Back Down. That movie had 3 major Hollywood actors, and it was distributed by 20th Century Fox. And yet that movie was not filmed in Hollywood. It was filmed in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is what eventually gave me the opportunity to audition for it, because at the time I was living in Cleveland, Ohio, and I had an agent in Cleveland that had an office in Pittsburgh, and they were able to submit me to the casting director, Donna Belichick, who is a local Pittsburgh casting director. So here's how the audition process went for that movie. Pittsburgh is about 2 hours away from Cleveland, and at the time there were no self-taped auditions. So when I got the first email about that audition from my agent, I grabbed my headshot and resume, and I drove 2 hours to Pittsburgh. I did my audition for Donna Belichick in her office, and then I drove 2 hours back home to Cleveland. And then 3 weeks went by. I didn't hear anything until I got another email from my agent that said, hey, you have another audition for a different role for that movie. So I grabbed my headshot and resume, I drove 2 hours to Pittsburgh, I did my audition for Donna, and I drove 2 hours back home to Cleveland. A week after that, I was notified that I got a call back for that audition, so I grabbed my headshot and resume, I drove 2 hours to Pittsburgh, I did my callback, this time with the director in the room, and then I drove 2 hours back home to Cleveland. 3 more weeks go by, I didn't hear anything, and at this point, I have learned that production has already started on the movie, meaning they've already started filming the movie. Typically, when production starts, they have already cast all the roles, and in this case, they did. So in my mind, I'm thinking, darn, I did not book them, which was true. I did not book either of those roles that I auditioned for. And then one day, I get a call from my agent, and he tells me, hey, they actually want to book you for a role in the movie. It was none of the roles that you auditioned for, but you got to go to Pittsburgh in a couple days. They'll put you in a hotel, and then you will film on set the next day. I was super happy. I had no idea what had happened, but I just booked my very first speaking role in a movie, so I was really excited. So how did I book that role without ever auditioning for it? Well, here's what happened. After the movie started production, the director, who also happened to be the writer, his name was Daniel Barnes, he decided that in one of the scenes, the main character, who was played by Maggie Gyllenhaal, needed something else to happen to her to help tell the story. And because of that, they needed another character. Now, instead of going through another round of auditions, they decided to just choose from the pool of actors who had already auditioned for the other roles in the movie, and they decided to choose me. And that is how I booked my very first speaking role in a major movie. I'm actually extremely grateful that I had to jump through all of those hoops before I booked my role. I'm really happy that I had to drive back and forth from Cleveland to Pittsburgh 3 times, not book either of those roles, and then eventually get offered a completely different role, because that process helped teach me this big lesson that has helped me throughout my entire career, and that is this. As actors, our job when we go to an audition is not to book the role. Our job is to book the room. Now, if you have never heard the term book the room before, I'll explain it in a second. First, let me explain why our job is not to book the role. And that's because there are so many factors that go into the casting process that we as actors have zero control over. We could actually go to an audition and give the best performance in the history of the world, and they'll still offer the part to somebody else. Why? Because maybe we were just wrong for the part. Maybe we were too tall for the role, or too short for the role, or too young, or too old, or too many other things that could go into this casting process. So if we don't have control over this, how can that be our job? So our job needs to be something that we actually have control over, and that is booking the room. Let me explain what that means. Whenever you go into an audition, by the time you walk out that door, you need to leave the people in there thinking, wow, that was a professional actor. And if you walk out the door and you left them thinking, wow, that was a professional actor, then you have done your job and you have booked the room. Because if they are thinking that of you, then that means in the future, they are more likely to call you in for more auditions. Whether that's a casting director, whether that's a director or producers, you will get more auditions from them, and that is your job as an actor. Because we can actually control how we present ourselves in the audition room. We can't control whether or not we book the part, but we can control how we come off as a professional actor in the room in front of the casting director. There's an acting teacher here in Atlanta who's a friend of mine. His name's Alex Collins, and he talks about controlling your controllables, which are the 3 things that he says actors have complete control over in our careers. And those are your materials, your attitude, and your training. Let's talk about how those 3 things can help you book the room in an audition. Your materials refers to your professional headshot, your professional resume, and your online casting profiles like Actors Access and Casting Networks. If those things are filled out correctly and you have a professional headshot and resume, then that can help you book the room at an audition. You have control over all that. Your attitude. If you present yourself in a professional manner, if you treat everyone you meet with professionalism, you have control over that, and that can help you book the room. And finally, your training. Have you been taking acting classes? Have you been doing everything that you can to improve your craft? Have you been doing everything that you can to make yourself the best actor you can be? You have control over that. And if you have been doing that and you've been able to apply your training to this audition, and you've prepared for this audition to the best of your ability, and then you go into the room and you deliver the best audition you possibly can, then that can help you book the room. And speaking about preparing for auditions, if you're interested in learning about how I prepare for my auditions, then I've created a free audition cheat sheet with the 10 steps that I use to help prepare the best audition that I can. And if you want to download that free cheat sheet, you can do it by clicking that link right there, or by clicking the link down in the description. So let's go back to my audition for the movie Won't Back Down. I have zero doubt that this is what helped me get the role that I eventually did. Because when I got my first audition, I drove to Pittsburgh, I did my audition, and I went home. I didn't end up booking that role, but I booked the room. So 3 weeks later, they brought me back to audition for another role. I did it, and I went back to Cleveland. I got a callback for that role. So I drove back to Pittsburgh, I did the callback, and I went back to Cleveland. I didn't end up booking that role either, but I booked the room again. So when it came time for them to cast this new role that was written into the movie, I have no doubt that those 3 auditions that I did helped give them confidence that I was the right person for the part. So that's my story about how I got my first speaking role in a major movie, as well as the big lesson that I learned about booking the room that has helped me to this very day. That's it for this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, remember to subscribe to this channel. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. And until next time, keep practicing, keep learning, and I hope to see you on set one day.